Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 2nd July 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China's global footprint and internal developments are broad and varied. Premier Li Qiang will represent China at the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, from July 5 to 8, while President Xi Jinping will be absent. Marking 50 years of relations with the European Union, China is pledging deeper cooperation, though a full rapprochement has not yet occurred, as Beijing appears to be taking a waiting-game approach. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, during the meeting with EU leaders in Brussels, urged China and Europe to unite against unilateralism and bullying, a subtle jab at the United States. The EU is urging China to lift restrictions on rare earth elements exports and address concerns regarding Chinese firms aiding Russia's war in Ukraine. China is also concerned about U.S. efforts to isolate Chinese firms from global supply chains. Domestically, President Xi Jinping has emphasized the need to advance the high-quality development of China's marine economy, advocating for stronger policy support to boost its growth. According to the China Finance 40 Forum, China's actual consumption power may have already surpassed Mexico and reached 40 to 50% of the levels seen in developed nations such as Japan and Germany. In the tech sector, Zhipu, a Chinese generative artificial intelligence unicorn, has secured 1 billion yuan, $140 million, in funding from Shanghai's state-backed investors ahead of its planned IPO. Baidu is upgrading its core internet search service using AI. China is also making progress in renewable energy, addressing grid stability issues with emerging liquid batteries. Humanoid robots competed in an AI-powered soccer tournament in Beijing. China's digital transformation has made it a key source of digital infrastructure investment for developing economies. However, China is also facing several challenges. The U.S. Congress is considering barring companies with ties to China. China's expansion of its renewable sector has led to challenges in maintaining a stable energy supply. China's aviation regulator imposed an emergency ban on some power banks due to safety risks. Internationally, China barred former Philippine Senator Francis Tolentino from entering its territories due to his egregious conduct. China's first satellite-to-satellite refueling test appears imminent. The country is also increasing its focus on copper supplies, especially from Africa. China is ready to install a large impulse turbine at the Datangzala hydropower station in Tibet. Turning to the Dalai Lama's succession, the Dalai Lama has stated that his successor will be chosen by the Garden Phodrang Trust, rejecting China's claim to authority over the matter. He emphasized that only his inner circle will identify his reincarnation, asserting that his lineage will continue and China will have no influence in the process. He suggested potentially altering established succession practices to prevent China from exploiting the situation to control Tibetan Buddhism. In the United States, President Donald Trump aims to invest tens of billions of dollars to revitalize American shipbuilding. He also agreed to initial trade terms with Vietnam, the second country to strike a limited deal after threatening steep tariffs. Chinese observers have warned that Beijing should remain alert to the continued solidarity between the U.S. and its regional partners in countering China, despite their trade tensions, with Washington citing this week's meeting of Indo-Pacific Quad partners as the latest example of such unified signaling. Meanwhile, the European Union is deeply engaged in discussions and actions regarding China. As mentioned, the EU is pressing China to end restrictions on rare earth elements exports and has warned about Chinese firms supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. As the EU marks 50 years of relations with China, discussions are underway for deeper cooperation, though a grand rapprochement has failed to materialize. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with EU leaders in Brussels, calling for China and Europe to unite against unilateralism and bullying. A veiled criticism of the United States. In Vietnam, President Donald Trump agreed to initial trade terms, making it the second country to strike a limited deal after he threatened steep tariffs. U.S. imports from Vietnam have risen since President Trump's first term, when he imposed hefty tariffs on China and manufacturers started searching for new locations for their overseas factories. Finally, South Korea reportedly halted its digital currency pilot program in favor of stablecoins, raising questions for China, a pioneer in central bank-backed digital currencies with its digital yuan, or EC9. United States is facing legal challenges as a federal court deemed Donald Trump's invasion declaration at the border unlawful. The court stated the president exceeded his authority. A judge also blocked Trump's asylum ban at the southern border. Trump toured a new migrant detention jail in the Florida Everglades. The Pentagon is reviewing weapons deliveries to allies due to decreasing munition stockpiles. The Pentagon has halted Patriot air defense system shipments to Ukraine due to concerns over lower stockpiles. This will affect Ukraine's ability to fend off Russian air assaults. The Pentagon stated as strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities set back Iran's nuclear program by 1 to 2 years. The House is voting on a rule to pave the way for the final debate on Trump's tax and spending bill. However, enough Republicans have voted against it to cause it to fail. Restaurant workers are protesting new work requirements that don't account for the unstable hours inherent in food service. Planned Parenthood CEO Alexis McGill Johnson warns that the House budget bill could result in the closure of nearly 200 health centers, potentially costing the organization $700 in federal funding. The U.S. government plans to breed and release billions of flies over Mexico and southern Texas to combat a flesh-eating maggot. A new CIA report criticizes the investigation into Russia's support for Donald Trump in the 2016 election. Donald Trump says Fed Chair Powell should resign immediately in latest attack on Fed Chair. Sean Diddy Combs was convicted on 2 of 5 counts in a sex abuse trial. Turning to Russia, tensions are rising with Azerbaijan following the deaths of 2 ethnic Azerbaijanis in Russian custody. Russia has ramped up military offensives on 2 fronts in Ukraine. Switzerland has identified Russia as one of the primary foreign spying threats. In North Korea, a massive beach resort, the Wonsan-Kalma coastal tourist area, has opened to domestic tourists. Russian tourists are expected next week. Kim Jong-un appeared to mourn his troops killed fighting for Russia. Yet, meanwhile, Donald Trump announced a deal to impose a 20% tariff on trade with Vietnam. Any transshipment will face a 40% levy, while Vietnam will accept us goods tariff-free. BRICS country leaders are meeting for the bloc's annual summit in Rio de Janeiro this week. Questions loom about the group's effectiveness as a voice of the global South. Lastly, in the Philippines, a proposal to build a U.S. ammunition manufacturing and storage hub in Subic Bay is raising fears of strategic entrapment, local economic disruption, and Chinese retaliation. Japan faces a complex political landscape as Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba navigates a minority government and an upcoming upper house election, following a significant defeat last year. Simultaneously, Japan is pressing the U.S. to reconsider its high tariffs, but stalled negotiations indicate a possible underestimation of President Trump's discontent with trade imbalances, specifically concerning Japanese car exports versus American vehicle imports. Despite these economic tensions, Nippon Steel seeks to highlight the benefits of Japan-U.S. collaboration. Economically, Japan is observing a downturn in tourist expenditures, with tax-free inbound sales at major department stores dropping by 41% in May, compared to the previous year. This decline occurs amidst record tax revenues, raising questions about Prime Minister Ishiba's promise to issue 20,000 cash handouts per adult, a measure estimated to cost around $3.5 trillion. In response to U.S. tariffs, only a limited number of major Japanese automakers have increased prices in the U.S., with Subaru's increase being the closest to the imposed 25% tariff on imported vehicles. In diplomatic news, Emperor Naruhito plans to visit Mongolia to pay tribute to Japanese World War II prisoners who perished there, some under severe conditions. He previously visited Mongolia in 2007 as Crown Prince. Within Japan, the Tokara Island chain in southern Japan has experienced over 900 earthquakes in the last 2 weeks, including a 5.6 magnitude quake. Though no significant damage has been reported, residents are suffering from sleeplessness and anxiety, and the Japan Meteorological Agency cannot predict when the seismic activity will end. To safeguard historical memory, Japanese war memorial networks are collaborating to improve information dissemination and create educational content for schools. In legal news, a Japanese court sentenced a 45-year-old man to 30 years in prison for the fatal stabbing of one of 3 employees at a Sapporo convenience store. Finally, a new documentary in their own words, The Women of Kurokawa, is scheduled for release on July 12th, featuring the stories of 3 survivors forced to offer themselves to protect their community from Soviet troops during the invasion of Japan's Manchurian colony in 1945. In Gaza, the conflict persists with a staggering death toll nearing 60,000, accompanied by continued military actions from Israeli forces. One recent airstrike targeted a residential building, resulting in the death of Dr. Marwan al-Sultan, the director of the Indonesian hospital and a senior cardiologist. Healthcare workers watch reports that Dr. al-Sultan's death brings the total number of healthcare workers killed in Israeli attacks to 70 in the past 50 days. There are also reports of Palestinians being killed by Israeli forces at Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid sites while seeking food. The Israeli military allegedly used a 500 Obel 230 kg bomb in an attack on a beachfront cafe in Gaza, prompting international law experts to express concerns that such weapons in populated civilian areas may constitute a war crime. Concurrently, ceasefire negotiations are underway, with Donald Trump asserting that Israel is prepared for a peace deal with Hamas, though the details of this potential agreement remain vague. Hamas is currently reviewing a U.S. truce proposal, and Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has indicated positive signs in the talk. Israel aims to resume these truce talks to end the war in Gaza and secure the release of hostages. Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to uproot Hamas, but has not commented on Trump's claim that Israel backed a 60-day truce plan. Turning to Iran, despite a 12-day bombing campaign by Israel and the U.S., opinions diverge regarding the extent of damage inflicted on Iran's nuclear facility. Patrick Wintour and Rusbeh Parsi have discussed the ambiguous state of Iran's nuclear program and its potential future actions. As a consequence of these strikes, Iran has suspended cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog, IAEA, criticizing Rafael Grossi, the IAEA head, for stating there was no evidence of a systematic effort to build nuclear bombs until after Israel began military attacks. Washington has deemed this decision unacceptable. 9G. Inspectors will no longer be able to oversee sites, raising concerns that Tehran could revive plans to build a bomb. Israel also claims to have detained an Iran-linked terrorist cell in Syria since Bashar al-Assad's overthrow in December. Israel has conducted airstrikes on military sites and deployed troops for raids within Syria. In the United Kingdom, a top court has ruled that the British government must decide on the acutely sensitive and political issue of supplying arms to Israel, following attempts by non-profits to halt the export of fighter jet parts. Ukraine is seeking collaborative weapons manufacturing agreements with allied nations, particularly as the United States has paused specific arms deliveries. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry, which relies heavily on U.S. military aid, reported that it received no prior notification regarding the reduction. Consequently, Ukraine summoned the acting U.S. envoy in Kyiv to underscore the vital importance of sustained military assistance from Washington, especially after the White House's announcement of the arms shipment suspension, which has hindered Kyiv's defense capabilities against ongoing Russian offensives. Turning to the United Kingdom, Simon Case, the former head of the UK civil service until December, characterized Olefontaine as a dictator in the context of threats against Taiwan, adding that China had signaled others to prepare for serious conflict concerning Taiwan. Case also noted that Donald Trump had exerted pressure on European nations to increase their defense budget. Meanwhile, UK lawmakers have voted to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist organization, a decision criticized by Amnesty International as an unprecedented legal overreach, effectively equating protesters opposing the Gaza war with groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL. In separate news, Rachel Reeves, Britain's Chancellor, showed visible distress in Parliament during a discussion about her role, which subsequently led to a decline in the value of the British pound and government bonds. In France, President Macron engaged in discussions with Russia's Putin, marking their first interaction in over 2.5 years. Israel is nearing a potential ceasefire agreement in Gaza, with President Trump stating that Israel has agreed to certain terms. However, Hamas has not yet accepted the proposal. Trump urged Hamas to agree, implying a worsening situation if they did not. The exact terms accepted by Israel remain undisclosed. Hamas official Tahir al-Nunu expressed the group's readiness for a ceasefire and serious intent to reach an agreement, while emphasizing their desire for a complete end to the war. Trump also mentioned a final proposal for a 60-day ceasefire, noting his representative's long and productive meeting with Israeli officials. Meanwhile, reports and videos suggest U.S. contractors guarding aid distribution sites in Gaza are using live ammunition, stun grenades, and pepper spray against Palestinians seeking food. An NPR journalist recounted facing Israeli military fire, chaotic crowds, and masked thieves while attempting to obtain food from a contractor-managed distribution site. The United States will see President Trump meeting with Eden Alexander, the last living American hostage released from Gaza in May, at the White House. Turning to the United Kingdom, over 400 media figures, including Miriam Margolyes and Alexei Saylor, have signed a letter addressed to BBC management demanding the removal of board member Robbie Gibb. The letter alleges conflict of interest related to the Middle East and raises concerns about censorship at the BBC regarding its coverage of Israel-Palestine. India and Ghana have solidified their relationship through the signing of 4 memorandums of understanding. These agreements, forged during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent 5-nation tour, emphasize enhanced cooperation, particularly in counter-terrorism efforts. India has also taken issue with Prada, accusing the fashion house of cultural appropriation. The controversy stems from Prada's sandals, which bear a striking resemblance to traditional Kolhapuri chapels. Prada only acknowledged the inspiration after facing criticism for replicating the sandals without acknowledging their cultural heritage. In Dharamsala, the Dalai Lama addressed the issue of succession. He announced his intention to have a successor after his death, in order to prevent Beijing from exploiting a potential power vacuum. This announcement, made at a gathering of spiritual leaders, comes shortly before his 90th birthday. Tibetan Buddhist monks have also convened in Dharamsala to discuss the future of the Dalai Lama's spiritual office. The succession is a sensitive issue, particularly as China seeks to exert control over who will succeed him, creating pressure to safeguard a vital aspect of Tibetan Buddhism. Shifting focus to Sri Lanka. Fisheries Minister Ramalingam Chandrasekhar has issued a stern warning. He stated that arrests and boat seizures will persist if Indian fishermen continue to trespass into Sri Lankan waters, emphasizing a zero-tolerance policy. Returning to Ghana, the nation has formalized stronger ties with India. The 4 memorandums of understanding, signed during Prime Minister Modi's tour, highlight a mutual commitment to enhanced cooperation, most notably in the realm of counter-terrorism. Australia is currently grappling with flood risks in parts of New South Wales and eastern Victoria, triggered by a low-pressure system that delivered heavy rainfall, even as severe weather warnings persist for damaging winds and hazardous surf. Simultaneously, major Australian banks, including NAB, CommBank, Westpac, and ARMS, are facing criticism for allegedly failing to fully implement ICC recommendations designed to assist customers in qualifying for bonus interest rates on savings accounts following a 2023 ACC inquiry. In a lighter vein, the city of Shepparton is contemplating the construction of a 3-story fiberglass pier estimated to cost over $1.30 million to enhance its reputation as the capital of big things in Australia. Adding an element of surprise, a domestic flight was delayed by 2 hours after a snake was found in the cargo hold of the plane. On the legislative front, Education Minister Jason Clare has instructed his department to urgently draft new childcare laws in the wake of charges against a childcare worker for sex offences. Further, the Australian government has cancelled the visa of US rapper Kanye West, also known as Ye, due to a song glorifying Adolf Hitler. Finally, the Australian consumer watchdog has issued a warning about counterfeit Labu toys being sold online, preying on the popularity of the dolls created by Hong Kong artist Lang Ka Sing. Indonesia recently experienced a ferry disaster in the Bali Strait. A vessel carrying 65 individuals capsized en route to Bali from Banyuwangi, Java, causing 4 fatalities. Initially, 38 people were missing, but this number was later revised to 43. Rescue teams are actively searching for the missing, while 23 survivors have been pulled from the water, some unconscious after enduring hours in the challenging maritime conditions. In economic developments, contemporary Amperex technology company, Limited Cattle, has begun constructing a battery project in Indonesia, representing an investment of approximately $6 billion. This project aims to secure vital materials and expand cattle's manufacturing footprint beyond China. In a move towards diplomatic cooperation, Indonesia and Malaysia have reached an agreement to jointly develop the Ambalat Sea Block, an area abundant in resources. This agreement, revealed during Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's visit to Indonesia, where discussions with President Prabowo Subianto covered border issues, investment, and regional tensions, signifies a practical strategy for addressing a long-standing territorial disagreement. Thailand saw a brief change in leadership, with Thai Transport Minister Surya Jonggrang serving as acting Prime Minister. He marked his single day in office with a ceremony in Bangkok celebrating the Prime Minister's office. Phumtham Behayakai is expected to take over as acting Prime Minister after being sworn in as Interior Minister. Thailand is also reversing its cannabis legalization, citing social problems. This policy shift has been met with resistance from cannabis producers, who fear a return to the black market. In other news, a James Bond museum in Fangay costing $1.20 million and dedicated to the man with the golden gun, closed after just 1 day. A lawmaker criticized the museum as a waste of resources and is demanding an investigation. Pakistan is grappling with severe weather, as flash floods and heavy rain have tragically resulted in 64 deaths over the past week. The Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province has been hit hardest, accounting for 23 fatalities, including 10 children. Compounding the region's woes, in the same Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, a bombing targeted the vehicle of Faisal Sultan, Assistant Commissioner of Bajar District's Nawagai Tehsil, near Mela Ground in Kar Tehsil, killing 4 government officials. In health news, Pakistan has recorded another poliovirus case, bringing the country's total to 14 this year. Pakistan, alongside Afghanistan, remains one of only 2 nations where polio remains an endemic threat. Fiji's Prime Minister, Sitiveni Rabuka, has offered 5,000 soldiers to aid the Australian Defence Force with personnel issues. Rabuka also declared that China's military bases are not welcome in the Pacific, but acknowledged China's investments negate the need for a security presence. In sports, Flying Fijians coach Mick Byrne urged his team to stay focused on their upcoming match against the Wallabies in Sydney. Byrne has also assembled a strong squad for Sunday's test in Newcastle. Fiji presently holds 3rd position at the Palau Mini Games. Meanwhile, Samoa is currently leading the Palau Mini Games with a total of 9 gold medals. Shifting focus to Australia, the country finds itself in 4th place at the Palau Mini Games. The Wallabies are gearing up to face Fiji in Sydney, followed by a highly anticipated match against the British and Irish Lions. Germany is grappling with a significant heat wave, driving residents to seek respite. Chancellor Olaf Scholz defended the decision against flying the rainbow flag on the Reichstag, emphasizing that it is not a place for entertainment. The nation is in mourning following the death of Günther Uecker, a prominent figure in the Zero Group, at the age of 95. Uecker's fame stemmed from his unique artistry involving hammering thousands of nails into objects, showcasing the power of repetition. As the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and the liberation of Nazi-occupied Europe approaches this summer, there are increasing worries about preserving Holocaust survivors' narratives amid declining numbers and rising Holocaust denial. Vietnam has entered into a new trade agreement with the United States. The agreement, announced by President Donald Trump, removes duties on U.S. goods imported into Vietnam. Conversely, Vietnamese exports to the United States will now face a 20% tariff. The United States mourns the loss of Richard A. Boucher, a former State Department spokesman. Boucher, aged 73, served under 6 different secretaries of state. He was recognized for his calm and diplomatic manner in articulating and defending U.S. foreign policy. Malaysia is currently grappling with anxieties over a possible leadership void within its judiciary, as Chief Justice Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat's tenure concluded, and Court of Appeal President Abang Iskandar. Abang Hashim's tenure is soon ending, both due to mandatory retirement ages, prompting a last-minute appeal to extend their service. Shifting focus to environmental policy, Malaysia has officially stopped importing plastic waste from the United States. Economically, Alibaba Cloud is increasing its investment in Malaysia, marked by the inauguration of its 3rd data center within the nation. In the Philippines, Alibaba Cloud is also boosting its regional infrastructure, with plans to launch its 2nd data center in October, enhancing its artificial intelligence capabilities within the country. El Salvador is facing serious allegations of human rights abuses within its prison system, specifically the Terrorism Confinement Center, SICO. Kilma Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident wrongfully deported there, claims he endured physical and psychological torture. Court documents filed in Maryland detail that Abrego Garcia and other inmates were allegedly forced to kneel for long periods, denied bathroom access, and held in overcrowded, brightly lit, windowless cells. His lawyers state he suffered severe mistreatment, including beatings, while imprisoned in El Salvador. Sri Lanka has recently welcomed Starlink satellite broadband service, expanding its availability in South Asia. Complementing this technological advancement, the International Monetary Fund is poised to disburse $350 million to Sri Lanka. This follows the successful fourth review of Sri Lanka's bailout program, designed to stabilize the economy by strengthening reserves and restructuring debt. Uganda mourns the loss of Anne Merriman, the mother of palliative care, who passed away at 90. As a medical doctor and former nun, Marion revolutionized palliative care. She created an affordable system to ease suffering for terminally ill people in developing countries. Her work brought comfort to countless impoverished patients. Oman is implementing its first ever income tax. Officials stated this tax will only impact a small percentage of residents. The goal is to lessen Oman's reliance on oil and gas revenue. Other Persian Gulf governments are observing this initiative carefully. Europe grapples with a deadly heat wave claiming at least 8 lives. Spain is reeling from 4 deaths, including 2 victims of a rapidly spreading wildfire in the northeast. Firefighters managed to contain the blaze. France reports 2 fatalities amidst the scorching temperatures. Similarly, Italy has confirmed 2 heat-related deaths. School closures and health alerts are widespread responses to the record-breaking heat. Portugal is also significantly impacted. Egypt recently unearthed the 4,500-year-old remains of a potter in Nuweirat, found within a sealed vessel. This discovery marks the first time a complete genetic code has been extracted from an ancient Egyptian. The potter's bones suggest a life of physical labor. Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Suez, an Egyptian oil drilling ship capsized. At least 4 crew members died and 4 remain missing. Argentina is witnessing heightened online attacks against journalists, especially women, orchestrated by President Javier Milei and his supporters, sparking fears regarding the state of press freedom. Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, is facing scrutiny for his remarks comparing Israel's actions in Gaza to the Holocaust. The comments have triggered strong reactions from Israeli officials and Jewish organizations worldwide. Brazil has recalled its ambassador from Israel. Canada is grappling with ongoing wildfires that are causing significant air quality issues across several provinces. Thousands have been evacuated as authorities struggle to contain the blazes, prompting health advisories for vulnerable populations. China's economy continues to show signs of slowing, with recent data indicating weaker than expected growth in key sectors. This has led to concerns about global economic stability, as China's economic performance has significant ripple effects worldwide. The government is considering new stimulus measures. France is preparing to host the upcoming Olympic Games amidst rising security concerns. The government is deploying additional security forces. France is also working to address potential disruptions from protests. Germany's coalition government is facing internal divisions over proposed budget cuts. Disagreements between coalition partners are threatening to stall key policy initiatives. The cuts are necessary to address the country's rising debt. India's upcoming general election is generating intense political activity. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a 3rd term. Opposition parties are attempting to unite against his Bharatiya Janata Party. Israel's military operations in Gaza are continuing, despite growing international pressure for a ceasefire. The conflict has resulted in a severe humanitarian crisis. Negotiations for a hostage release and a pause in fighting are ongoing. Japan's population decline is accelerating, posing challenges to its economy and social welfare system. The government is exploring measures to encourage higher birth rates. It is also considering increasing immigration. Mexico is preparing for its presidential election, with Claudia Sheinbaum leading in the polls. The election is seen as a referendum on the current administration's policies. Security is a major concern due to violence. Russia is facing increased international sanctions. These sanctions are in response to its ongoing war in Ukraine. The sanctions are impacting Russia's economy. Saudi Arabia is continuing its efforts to diversify its economy away from oil. The kingdom is investing heavily in tourism and technology, but the goal is to reduce its reliance on fossil fuel. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is facing increasing criticism over his government's human rights record. Concerns include restrictions on freedom of speech. There are also concerns about the treatment of political opponents. Ukraine is continuing to defend itself against Russian aggression. The country is receiving military and financial aid from Western allies. The conflict has caused widespread destruction and displacement. The United Kingdom is experiencing ongoing economic challenges. Inflation remains higher than expected. The government is struggling to address the cost of living crisis. The United States is grappling with political divisions. Debates are ongoing over issues such as immigration and gun control. The upcoming presidential election is expected to be highly contested. India recently marked a significant milestone as Prime Minister Modi visited Ghana, the first such visit by an Indian Prime Minister. The discussions centered on bolstering cooperation in trade, development, and diplomatic ties, reflecting the historical bonds between the two nations. France is currently facing scrutiny as a parliamentary report accuses Prime Minister François Bayrou of inaction regarding abuse allegations at Notre-Dame-de-Beth-Tharon Catholic boarding school, when he was education minister between 1993 and 1997. Shifting gears to sports, the 112th edition of the Tour de France is set to begin in Lille on Saturday, with Tadej Pogacar vying for his fourth title. Mexico is grappling with the deadly fallout from a regional war in Sinaloa. The conflict was triggered by the arrest of a major drug lord last summer. The violence has resulted in over 1,000 deaths and a similar number of missing individuals. Meanwhile, Hurricane Flossie has strengthened into a Category 3 hurricane in the Pacific. The storm is currently located off the southwest coast of Mexico. South Korea is facing a major political scandal. A secret recording suggests former President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered drone missions over Pyongyang. The alleged intent was to provoke North Korea. Yoon purportedly planned to use the response to justify martial law. Special prosecutors are investigating Yoon. The charges include insurrection and incitement of foreign aggression. Europe is grappling with an intense heat wave. This weather event is significantly affecting daily life for residents and travelers. The extreme temperatures are causing discomfort and straining resources across the continent. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new measures to combat rising inflation. These measures include targeted financial support for low-income families. The goal is to alleviate the burden of increased living costs. In the latest from the United States, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates. This decision aims to curb inflation. The move is expected to impact borrowing costs for consumers and businesses. Moving to China, the government introduced new regulations on technology companies. These regulations target data security and user privacy. The rules aim to tighten control over the tech sector. Shifting focus to Australia, the government is investing heavily in renewable energy projects. This initiative seeks to reduce carbon emissions. The investment aims to support the country's transition to a green economy. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has pardoned 16 prisoners amidst a continuing crackdown on dissent. The pardons arrive as the government faces sustained international criticism for its human rights record. Many political prisoners remain incarcerated in Belarus. Moving to Russia, the nation has reported a successful test launch of its nuclear-capable Iskander-M missile system. The exercise took place at the Kapustin Yar range. This display of military capability comes amid heightened tensions with the West. Focusing on the United States, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by another 0.25%. This decision aims to combat persistent inflation. The move could impact borrowing costs for consumers and businesses. Shifting to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new measures to support Indigenous communities. The initiatives include increased funding for education and healthcare. This aims to address historical injustices and improve living standards. But in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed Parliament regarding the energy crisis. He outlined plans to secure alternative energy sources. Germany seeks to reduce its reliance on Russian gas. Turning to China, the government has released new economic data indicating slower growth. Experts cite ongoing COVID-19 lockdowns as a major factor. The global economy is watching closely for potential repercussions. Malaysia is actively investigating a Singapore-registered mining company over alleged bribery in Sabah, spurred by videos released by businessman Albert Tai Jianqing. These videos allegedly show state lawmakers negotiating bribes. Armenia is looking to deepen its ties with China without any restrictions, hoping to diversify its foreign policy after the Nagorno-Karabakh War. Lithuania's defense minister praised a Philippine campaign, drawing attention to China's activities in the South China Sea. In Estonia, a court ruled that Russia's military intelligence was behind an arson attack targeting a Ukrainian restaurant and supermarket last year. Turning to Somalia, an African Union military helicopter crashed at Mogadishu's airport, resulting in at least 3 fatalities. In Canada, Julian Cheng Jetson, a communications expert, has departed from the University of British Columbia, UBC. He is now a chair professor and dean at Great Bay University, GBU, in China, specifically heading the School of Information Science and Technology. A U.S.-brokered peace agreement aims to bring stability to the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Rwanda after years of conflict that displaced 7 million people. New Wheel opted out of the 2025 Pacific Mini-Games due to the prohibitive travel costs to Palau, despite its presence on the medal table on the first day. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, Pacific advocates feel that proposed legal changes concerning out-of-hours immigration visits, including dawn raids, don't go far enough. Tonga experienced a health data hack last month, which a former director of the cybersecurity agency called a wake-up call for the entire Pacific region, emphasizing the urgent need for better cybersecurity. In the United States, Savannah, Georgia police responded to a mall shooting where 3 people suffered gunshot wounds. Finally, in Brazil, a Magellanic penguin was seen on a Rio de Janeiro beach, capturing the attention of beachgoers who shared images on social media. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.